over 25 years in 19th century Pennsylvania, 5 intelligent and vibrant women married the wealthy industrialist Jeremiah Hartwell. Each entered his opulent Beacon Hill mansion full of promise, yet everyone met the same chilling fate: complete mental collapse within months of living in the master bedroom. By the time the truth surfaced in 1835, it stunned not only Millbrook County, but the entire state. Authorities uncovered not a coincidence or curse, but a calculated scheme to destroy women's minds. Jeremiah Hartwell's rise had been as swift as it was ruthless. Arriving in Millbrook in 1821 at just 25, he built the Hartwell Iron Works, from nothing, supplying railroad components vital to America's westward expansion. By 1828, his grand 42-room mansion, adorned with imported marble French wallpaper and sprawling gardens, towered above the town as a symbol of his success. Standing over 6 feet tall with piercing blue eyes and striking silver hair, Hartwell commanded attention in any room. His charm and wealth made him Western Pennsylvania's most eligible bachelor, and his 1829 marriage to Margaret Dunlap, the judge's beautiful young daughter, was celebrated as the match of the decade. But within a year, Margaret's behavior shifted from subtle distraction to alarming obsession. She claimed the house was watching her, spoke to empty doorways, and insisted on sleeping only in the master suite. Servants whispered about her watching habit: long hours, staring at her own reflection as though waiting for it to speak. The breaking point came during a dinner party when she began a heated conversation with the mirror in front of stunned guests, pausing as if the reflection replied. Later that night, she was found stripping wallpaper in the master bedroom, convinced something was hidden beneath. The walls revealed nothing but plaster and beams. Yet she appeared satisfied, as if she had uncovered a terrible truth only she could see. By morning, the family doctor declared her physically sound, but suffering from severe nervous exhaustion and obsessive melancholia, the first of many wives to fall victim to Hartwell's hidden cruelty. Dr. Henley's private notes, later introduced as critical evidence, described Margaret Hartwell's disturbing obsession with mirrors. She believed her reflection was an entirely separate being, another self that revealed hidden truths about the mansion's past. Within 2 weeks, her condition worsened to the point that she required constant supervision. She roamed the halls, seeking out every reflective surface, conversing with what she called the other Margarets, and interpreting messages she claimed only she could understand. When anyone attempted to cover the mirrors, she reacted with violent desperation, clawing at the coverings until her hands bled. On the night of September 15, 1830, Margaret gathered every mirror piece of polished silver and reflective object in the mansion, arranging them in a strange pattern throughout the master bedroom. She spent the night in what the housekeeper later called a conference with her other selves. By morning, she no longer recognized anyone in the household, speaking only to the reflections, which she insisted were her real family. Dr. Henley, after consulting with colleagues in Philadelphia, recommended her commitment to the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane. On a gray October morning, she was taken away in a closed carriage, calling back to her unseen companions that she would return soon. She never did. For the next 43 years, Margaret lived in the institution, her mind lost, but her fixation on mirrors unbroken. The news of her commitment shook Millbrook's social circles. Some whispered of hereditary madness, while others saw Jeremiah as a tragic widower, his promising marriage ruined by misfortune. In his official report, Dr. Henley attributed her collapse to nervous overstimulation, brought on by the sudden demands of high society, an explanation that fit the era's beliefs about women's fragility. Jeremiah withdrew from public life, sealing the master bedroom and retreating to a smaller room upstairs. He kept a skeleton household staff and spent his nights buried in medical texts and correspondence, chasing explanations for what he called the science of mental affliction. His journals, found decades later, revealed a man tormented by his wife's fate, yet methodical in his search for understanding. When word came in 1833 that Margaret had died after years of physical decline, her funeral was a quiet family affair. Her headstone read only, "Beloved wife, at peace." But those who knew Jeremiah noticed subtle changes. He became exacting in his appearance, demanded that every mirror in his office be polished twice daily, and developed the habit of checking his reflection repeatedly during meetings. When he began speaking of marriage again, it was with the dispassion of a business negotiation. In 1834, he met Elena Rodriguez, the spirited and intelligent daughter of a Spanish merchant. Unlike Margaret, Elena exuded confidence and seemed resilient in temperament, qualities Jeremiah noted with interest. Their engagement that spring surprised Millbrook, and their June wedding, though smaller than his first, restored some of his former charm. Soon after, Jeremiah reopened and redecorated the master bedroom, replacing every furnishing and filling it with new mirrors. Elena embraced her role as mistress of the mansion, taking pride in the suite and delighting guests with its bright, reflective beauty. For 6 months, she flourished in society, her warmth and poise making her a popular hostess, seemingly untouched by the shadows that had consumed her predecessor. By the winter of 1834, Elena's friends and household staff began to notice faint but troubling shifts in her behavior, changes that, though unspoken, mirrored the earliest signs of Margaret's decline. In February 1835, her maid Maria Santos recorded in her private diary that Elena had spent 2 hours at her vanity, not looking directly at herself, but slightly to the side, as if watching another person in the glass. When asked if she needed anything, Elena whispered, "She's trying to tell me something important, Maria. I must listen." Within weeks, Elena's mirror-gazing evolved into full conversations. Unlike Margaret's agitated mutterings, Elena's exchanges were calm, even cheerful. She told Maria that her reflection, whom she now referred to as the Mirror Woman, shared secrets about the mansion, the previous occupants, and hidden details of household management. Dr. Henley, consulted discreetly, noted the parallels to Margaret's illness, but also the differences. Elena remained lucid, social, and capable in all areas except her growing fixation on mirrors. In April, Elena confided that the Mirror Woman had revealed a shocking truth: that Margaret was still in the house, trapped within the reflective surfaces, trying to warn future wives. According to Elena, Margaret had uncovered a secret so dangerous that she had been made to appear insane to silence her. Jeremiah responded not with alarm, but with curiosity. Determined to understand the pattern, he began recording, which mirrors provoked the strongest reactions when the conversations were most intense, and what information Elena claimed to receive. The results were consistent. The master bedroom's large vanity mirror, Margaret's favorite, produced the most vivid episodes, especially between sunset and midnight. The Mirror Woman told Elena of hidden rooms, secret passages, and a conspiracy that spanned years. By summer, Elena's dependence on mirrors was impossible to conceal. She refused social events unless mirrors were present, becoming restless and withdrawn if she could not consult her advisor. The breaking point came in August 1835, when Elena summoned Jeremiah to the master bedroom on an oppressively hot night. Sitting motionless before the vanity, she told him, "She has shown me the truth about this house, about what you do to women who live here, and why Margaret truly went insane." She described hidden chambers accessible through the walls, secret observation points, and evidence of what she called medical experiments on unwilling subjects. She accused Jeremiah of drugging his wives under the guise of treating headaches, causing hallucinations and confusion. "The medicine you give me," she said quietly, "is not what you say it is. It's not medicine at all." "Is it?" Elena's voice was steady but cold. She showed me what it really does, how it makes women see things that aren't there, how it makes them appear insane to everyone else. By morning, Jeremiah had already met with Dr. Henley, framing Elena's accusations as dangerous paranoia, echoing Margaret's breakdown. Henley, noting the unsettling similarities, warned of a complete break from reality and urged immediate intervention before violence could follow. But Elena refused to be quietly removed. Over the next few days, she launched her own investigation, rallying Maria and other staff to search for the hidden passages described by the Mirror Woman. Their efforts uncovered a narrow panel behind the master bedroom wardrobe opening into a cramped, dust-choked corridor that ran between the walls. Inside were small observation holes looking into the bedrooms. "The passages are real," Elena told Maria with triumph. "If this part is true, then all of it is true." The revelation shook the household and rattled Jeremiah, who admitted in his journal that he'd had no knowledge of these features. Yet Elena's interpretation, seeing the architecture as proof of a conspiracy against wives, he dismissed as delusional. As rumors spread through Millbrook, whispers turned into pointed questions. Why hadn't Jeremiah known of the passages? What were they for? And why had two wives fallen into the same peculiar madness, tied to the same bedroom? The tension escalated when Elena's father, Don Carlos Rodriguez, arrived unannounced from Pittsburgh. A sharp-minded merchant unaccustomed to evasions. He found his daughter lucid on every subject except her unwavering belief in the Mirror Woman. His private talk with Jeremiah was blunt. "My daughter says she has uncovered criminal activity in your home and that her mind is being tampered with through drugs she does not consent to. These are serious charges, and you will answer them." The confrontation was set in the library, one of the few rooms without mirrors. Elena insisted on bringing a hand mirror into the meeting, refusing to speak without her advisor's counsel. "She knows things about this house that no one else understands." Elena set her fingers clutching the mirror's frame as though it were a lifeline. "She has been trying to protect me just as she tried to protect Margaret," Elena told her father, clutching the mirror as though it anchored her to the truth. Unlike others, Don Carlos did not brush aside her words as the ramblings of an unstable mind. Instead, he pressed for specifics, asking her to recount exactly what the Mirror Woman had revealed about the house's former occupants. What followed unsettled everyone present. Elena described the mansion's original owner in vivid detail, noted obscure architectural features from decades past, and recited precise facts about financial transactions and private dealings that had occurred long before her arrival in Millbrook. She named Jeremiah's business associates, men he had never mentioned to her, and referenced letters she could not possibly have read. Most unnerving were her accounts of conversations held in the library years earlier, rendered word for word. "The Mirror Woman sees everything in this house," Elena said. "She has been watching for years, storing away every secret about the people who live here. The real reason Jeremiah chose this house, even the hidden records he keeps." Her revelations painted a damning picture. The Hartwell mansion was no ordinary residence, but a structure chosen for its concealed passages and observation points, a tool for gathering information on influential visitors. Jeremiah's wealth, Elena suggested, was built on intelligence gathered through covert surveillance, and his marriages were calculated to project a veneer of respectability that masked these illicit operations. The conversation was still unfolding when Dr. Henley arrived, called by Jeremiah to support a formal case for Elena's commitment. But with Don Carlos present and clearly shifting the matter from a question of sanity to a matter of criminal suspicion, the meeting Jeremiah had intended as a medical hearing began to look far more like the opening act of an investigation. What was meant to be a straightforward assessment of Elena's sanity quickly turned into an inquest on the disturbing parallels between her condition and Margaret's. Don Carlos fixed his gaze on Dr. Henley. In your medical opinion, what could cause two different women with no prior history of mental illness to develop nearly identical symptoms after living in the same place? Henley hesitated before admitting that while rare, such coincidences were not impossible. Stress isolation, or exposure to certain substances, could in theory produce similar symptoms in different people. But he acknowledged that the repeated focus on mirrors and the consistent accounts of receiving information from reflections pointed to something more specific. Either a shared delusion, he said slowly, or what Dr. Don Carlos pressed. Or the possibility that both women were subjected to the same environmental conditions, capable of producing hallucinogenic effects, leaving them highly suggestible while otherwise able to function. The weight of that implication settled over the room. Like the oppressive summer heat, if true, then Margaret's madness was not a tragic accident, but the product of deliberate manipulation. Elena, growing restless, demanded a mirror so she could confirm details before speaking further. Denied, she grew agitated and began rattling off precise descriptions of locked rooms and concealed compartments. Jeremiah insisted she could not possibly know such details, but her certainty only sharpened. At last, she declared that the mirror woman had revealed the location of evidence that would prove everything. She led them to the master bedroom, guiding them to a section of wall behind the massive wardrobe. There, following her instructions, they uncovered not only the narrow passage Maria had discovered weeks earlier, but also a hidden compartment. Inside was a cache of documents that would shift the matter from a medical concern to a criminal case. By lamplight, Don Carlos examined the contents among them, a leather-bound ledger, meticulously kept in Jeremiah's own hand. Its entries chronicled years of surveillance conducted from the hidden passages. Private conversations, political secrets, and high-stakes business dealings observed without the knowledge of those involved. The records showed how Jeremiah had leveraged this stolen information to manipulate markets, blackmail rivals, and secure lucrative contracts. One chilling example read, March 15, 1829. Senator Patterson discussed railroad route plans in drawing room with associates, confirmed northern passage through Millbrook Valley, adjusted investment portfolio accordingly. It was the first crack in the facade of Jeremiah Hartwell's respectability and proof that the walls of his mansion had been listening all along. June 3, 1829. Judge Dunlap revealed his gambling debts to his wife during a private bedroom conversation. Excellent leverage for upcoming court cases involving the ironworks. But the ledger was only the beginning. Beneath loose floorboards wrapped in oilcloth, they found another cache correspondence between Jeremiah and Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, a German physician known for experimental treatments for female hysteria in discreet institutions across Pennsylvania. Zimmermann's letters, written in a blend of English and German, outlined a calculated program to induce controlled mental instability in women who threatened their husbands' interests. His treatments relied on carefully measured doses of mercury compounds, laudanum derivatives, and plant extracts designed to cause hallucinations and confusion while leaving the patient otherwise functional. The beauty of the treatment, one letter read, is that the subject appears normal in casual company, yet develops private obsessions and delusions that render her testimony worthless. The fixation on mirrors is especially effective, appearing to be vanity yet twisting into madness. Elena's claims of being drugged were no delusion. The headache medicine Jeremiah administered contained the very substances Zimmermann described, chemicals that warped vision and perception, particularly when combined with the stress of isolation and the constant awareness of being watched. Margaret Hartwell's so-called breakdown had been no act of fate. She too had been poisoned after uncovering Jeremiah's surveillance network. The drugs made her see disturbing visions in mirrors, while her warnings were dismissed as madness. The final bundle of documents exposed the full scale of Jeremiah's operation. His mansion was not merely a home, it was the nerve center of a private intelligence network. The hidden passages were outfitted for more than eavesdropping. They connected to storage rooms, concealed copying equipment, and secure vaults holding blackmail material. Jeremiah's marriages had been strategic alliances, each wife serving as a refined hostess to lure targets and collect gossip under the guise of genteel hospitality. When Margaret stumbled upon his activities, Zimmerman's methods silenced her. When Elena began asking the same dangerous questions, the process was set in motion, again relying on the era's medical ignorance to mask the crime. Don Carlos needed no convincing. The papers were proof of criminal conspiracy at the highest level implicating powerful men across Pennsylvania. And more urgently, they proved his daughter's life was in immediate peril, so long as she remained in Jeremiah Hartwell's house. Elena will be leaving this house tonight, Don Carlos said evenly, and she will be taking these documents to the authorities. Dr. Henley, I trust you'll be revising your medical opinion of my daughter in light of this evidence. Henley's reply came slowly, heavy with the weight of professional conscience. If these documents are genuine, then both Margaret Hartwell and Elena Hartwell were victims of deliberate poisoning designed to mimic mental illness. Elena's condition should improve once the toxic substances are stopped. Jeremiah's response was almost unnervingly calm. The documents are forgeries, he said, planted by Elena during her delusional episodes. This so-called correspondence with Dr. Zimmerman is pure invention, a way to prop up her paranoia about being poisoned. She is capable of manufacturing false evidence as part of her illness. But Don Carlos was ready for that defense. Then you won't object to having these medicines analyzed by independent chemists, he said, producing the bottles Jeremiah had given Elena. And you certainly won't mind if handwriting experts determine whether these papers are in your hand or someone else's. Before Jeremiah could reply, a voice cut through the tension from the bedroom doorway. Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper, for over a decade, stepped forward, her face set with grim resolve. I can't stay silent any longer, she said. I've watched 2 good women destroyed in this house, and I won't watch it happen again. Mr. Rodriguez, your daughter is telling the truth. I've seen the master give those medicines. I've seen him in the passages spying on guests. And I've seen what those treatments do to the women who sleep in that room. Her testimony shattered the last of Jeremiah's defenses. As head housekeeper, Sarah had moved freely through the house, seeing things no one else could. She'd watched Margaret's decline and recognized the same slow unraveling in Elena. I prepared the medicines Mr. Hartwell gave both wives. She admitted, her voice trembling. He told me they were prescribed by Dr. Henley, but they came in unmarked bottles from private couriers. When I asked, he said they were experimental European remedies unavailable here. Sarah went on to explain how Jeremiah increased the dosage over time, always during periods when his wives spent the most time in the master bedroom, ensuring their visions, confusion, and paranoia grew in ways that would seem like madness to outsiders, but were in truth the effects of a carefully calculated poisoning. Sarah's voice shook as she recounted what she had witnessed, both women developing an unnatural fixation with mirrors, withdrawing from friends and family, and slowly losing the ability to separate reality from hallucination. The worst part, she said, was watching them try to explain what was happening, only for everyone to dismiss them as mad. Margaret had complained of being watched through the walls of food that tasted wrong, of mirrors showing her impossible visions. Everyone labeled it nervous hysteria. But when Elena began describing the exact same experiences, Sarah knew it was no coincidence. The room fell silent as the truth sank in. Dr. Henley's own medical prescriptions had been subverted. The headache powders and nerve tonics he thought he was providing had been replaced with Jeremiah's custom compounds, potent hallucinogens, disguised as legitimate treatment. Henley's diagnoses had unwittingly become the perfect smokescreen, enabling Jeremiah to undermine his wife's credibility, while presenting himself as the devoted husband coping with personal tragedy. The realization cracked his professional composure. "I need to examine Mrs. Hartwell immediately," Henley said, urgency sharpening his voice. "If she has been subjected to long-term poisoning with hallucinogenic agents, there may still be detectable traces. We must begin counteracting them at once." But Jeremiah, ever the strategist, shifted tactics. Abandoning outright denial, he offered a partial confession that admitted just enough to appear candid while shielding himself from the most damning charges. "You're correct," he said evenly, "that I have used this house for surveillance. The passages were built by the previous owner, who shared my interest in discreetly gathering intelligence on associates and rivals. When I purchased the property, I simply continued the practice it offered undeniable advantages in business negotiations. It was a calculated move, acknowledged the espionage to make himself seem forthcoming, while denying any role in the poisoning conspiracy or deliberate destruction of his wife's sanity. Jeremiah insisted his wives had stumbled upon the hidden passages on their own, and had simply unraveled under the strain of learning about his business intelligence work. The medicines he claimed were genuine remedies that had failed to halt their decline. Margaret became convinced I was spying on her. Personally, he said, when in fact I was merely gathering information for commercial purposes. Elena has fallen into the same trap, weaving conspiracy theories around ordinary business practices. Under other circumstances, his explanation might have been convincing, but the damning correspondence from Dr. Zimmerman left no room for doubt. The letters were precise, their descriptions of symptoms and methods aligning too perfectly with the experiences of both women to be dismissed as coincidence. Don Carlos was unmoved. "We'll let the courts decide whether your actions were business or criminal conspiracy," he said coldly. "In the meantime, Elena will be leaving this house under the care of doctors who have not been compromised by your lies." Then, after sitting quietly for much of the exchange, Elena spoke with a steadiness that startled the room. "The mirror woman isn't gone," she said calmly. "She's still here, but now I see her without the medicines clouding my mind. She's not a spirit or a hallucination. She's me, the part of me that stayed rational and alert while the rest of my mind was being broken down." Her words reframed everything. The mirror woman had been her subconscious mind, fighting the effects of the drugs by creating an alternate self to observe, remember, and protect. Those conversations had been internal dialogues between the drugged, confused Elena and the lucid part of herself piecing together the truth. "I remember everything now," she continued. "Every conversation overheard through the passages, every document I glimpsed when Jeremiah thought I was too far gone to notice every detail of his dealings with Dr. Zimmerman. She wasn't telling me secrets, she was helping me remember what I already knew." In the days that followed Elena's recovery, and the cache of evidence unleashed shockwaves through Millbrook and the wider Pennsylvania business community. Don Carlos immediately turned the documents over to county authorities, while Dr. Henley documented her rapid improvement as proof her condition had been induced, not natural. Within days of stopping Jeremiah's treatments, her symptoms vanished. The mirrors no longer held power over her, and her clarity returned in full. Her restored memory gave investigators a roadmap to Jeremiah's criminal network, what prosecutors came to call the Hartwell conspiracy. Proved vast years of surveillance, blackmail, and information trafficking, serving corrupt judges, crooked politicians, and predatory businessmen. Jeremiah had sold secrets for profit-shaping court rulings and business takeovers from the shadows. Margaret Hartwell's fate was tragically redefined when her body was exhumed. Using the most advanced forensic methods available in 1835, examiners found mercury and other toxins in her remains, clear proof she had been poisoned. Her death was reclassified as homicide, opening the door to murder charges alongside conspiracy and fraud. The Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane contributed detailed treatment records confirming that what had been taken for mental collapse was in truth the calculated destruction of a woman who had learned too much. The recovered records from the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane revealed a chilling truth: Margaret Hartwell had never fully lost her mind. Throughout her confinement, she experienced stretches of lucidity in which she repeatedly accused her husband of poisoning women to conceal his criminal operations. What had once been dismissed as the incoherent ramblings of a deranged patient was now recognized as the clear and accurate testimony of a victim enduring deliberate chemical torture. Sarah Quinn's decision to speak out proved pivotal. Her intimate knowledge of the household's daily routines, combined with her observations of both wives' decline, allowed investigators to map a precise timeline, one that matched perfectly with the administration of Dr. Zimmerman's experimental compounds. Her testimony also revealed disturbing patterns involving house guests and business associates who had fallen mysteriously ill after visiting the Hartwell mansion, hinting at an even wider pool of victims. Authorities eventually tracked Dr. Zimmerman to Philadelphia, where he was found conducting similar treatments in a private asylum. His arrest exposed a sprawling network of physicians and businessmen who had weaponized medicine to incapacitate women whose knowledge, influence, or resistance posed a threat. The scandal, quickly branded the poisoning conspiracy by the press, implicated dozens of prominent men across Pennsylvania and neighboring states. Jeremiah Hartwell's trial became one of the most sensational criminal cases in the state's history. The prosecution built its case on Elena's detailed and lucid account of her ordeal, Sarah Quinn's exhaustive testimony, and the damning trove of documents recovered from the mansion's hidden compartments. The coup de grace came when Dr. Zimmerman, facing the full weight of multiple felony charges, agreed to cooperate in exchange for leniency. His expert testimony described in clinical detail how the compounds used on both Margaret and Elena were designed to mimic mental illness while preserving physical functionality. The defense tried to recast Jeremiah as a dupe, an unwitting pawn manipulated by Zimmerman and other conspirators into believing his wives were genuinely insane. But this narrative collapsed when prosecutors presented letters in Jeremiah's own hand, initiating contact with Zimmerman and explicitly requesting treatments that would render a woman's testimony unreliable while keeping her socially presentable. The jury deliberated less than a day before returning a unanimous verdict: guilty on all charges. First-degree murder for Margaret's death, attempted murder for Elena's poisoning, and multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion tied to his surveillance and blackmail empire. The court's judgment matched the enormity of the crimes: death by hanging to be carried out within 30 days. In December 1835, Jeremiah Hartwell met his fate on the gallows, his downfall as public as the power he had once wielded in secret. By then, Elena's recovery was complete. She had returned to her father's home in Pittsburgh, regaining her health and eventually remarrying a Spanish import merchant. Though she lived a long and stable life, she never publicly spoke of the Hartwell mansion again beyond her sworn testimony at trial. The mansion itself became an enduring symbol of the darker undercurrents of America's industrial rise wealth, built on secrecy, exploitation, and the silencing of women whose concerns were too easily dismissed as hysteria. Sold off to satisfy Jeremiah's debts, the estate was stripped of its sinister features. The passages sealed the mirrors, removed the master bedroom, partitioned into smaller rooms. It was converted into a boarding house for railroad workers, its grandeur reduced to rented space, but the shadow of its history remained. The Hartwell case left a profound mark on Pennsylvania law. Reforms were enacted requiring independent medical evaluations before committing anyone to an asylum, along with tighter oversight of private institutions. The revelations also ignited national debate about how medical authority could be abused to control or discredit women, and the urgent need for stronger legal protections. For Dr. Henley, the trial was a professional reckoning. Realizing his role, albeit unintentional, in enabling Jeremiah's crimes, He devoted the rest of his career to studying the psychiatric effects of toxic compounds. Funded in part by restitution from Hartwell's estate, his research advanced techniques for detecting poisoning and treating its effects. Henley also became a vocal advocate for women's medical rights, insisting that female patients deserve the same care, scrutiny, and respect as men. Yet perhaps the most unsettling legacy of the Hartwell conspiracy was the question it left unanswered: how many other women across America had suffered the same fate, declared insane? Not because of illness, but because their truth was too dangerous for powerful men to allow. Historical accounts suggest the Hartwell case was not an anomaly, but part of a far wider pattern of medical abuse. One that may have silenced hundreds, perhaps thousands of victims whose stories were never formally investigated. It underscored a truth still relevant today. Women's reports of strange, frightening, or implausible experiences should not be dismissed simply because they defy accepted norms. Margaret and Elena had described being watched, drugged, and manipulated, claims written off as madness, but ultimately proven to be precise accounts of the crimes committed against them. Today, the site where the Hartwell mansion once stood is a modest park in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. In 1985, exactly 150 years after Jeremiah Hartwell's execution, a historical marker was placed there to honor the victims of the poisoning conspiracy. Its inscription is simple, yet haunting. In memory of Margaret Dunlap Hartwell, Elena Rodriguez Hartwell, and all victims of medical abuse. Their courage in seeking truth despite overwhelming obstacles helped establish important legal protections that continue to safeguard patients' rights today. The Hartwell case remains a cautionary tale about the ease with which those in positions of trust can exploit the vulnerable and the lasting harm that results when legitimate warnings are ignored. It reminds us that when someone says their reality does not match what others perceive, the first duty is to listen, because the truth may be far darker than anyone dares to imagine. Thank you all very much for watching my video until the end. I sincerely appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.